Morning in Chicago gleamed like polished steel. The skyline sliced through a pale fog glass, and iron catching the first cold light of winter. Inside the 32nd floor of Hartman and Vale, silence was currency. Precision was law. Cole Hartman stood at the head of the conference table, like a man carved out of the city itself. Tall, deliberate, unreadable. His reputation preceded him. Brilliant, disciplined, impossible to please. No assistant had lasted more than a month. The walls seemed to hum with his rules. And then the door burst open. A gust of November air followed a woman who stumbled halfway into the room. Hair slightly tangled, resume bent at the corner. A coffee cup clutched like a lifeline. She froze when she saw him. Cole didn't move. His eyes, sharp ice blue, flicked to the clock on the wall. "You're late," he said. His voice was low even, but it landed like a blade. Quinn Parker blinked, swallowed, then smiled the kind of smile that shouldn't exist in this kind of silence. "Yes," she admitted, "but I did climb 8 floors after the elevator jammed, so technically, I'm only half late." A small sound broke the air. Not laughter, but disbelief. Cole's jaw flexed. No one talked back to him. Not executives, not board members. Definitely not interviewees with lipstick on their tooth. "Sit," he said finally. Quinn obeyed, missing the chair slightly before catching herself. A ripple of restrained amusement passed through the glass-walled room. She could feel the analyst's eyes on her, curious, judgmental, entertained. Cole didn't smile. He never did. "Why should I hire you?" he asked. Quinn took a breath, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Because I don't scare easy," she said. "And you look like a man who scares everyone." A silence followed, dense and electric. One of the board members coughed softly. Cole's gaze rested on her a moment longer than necessary. "What makes you think fear is a flaw?" "It's not," she said quietly. "It's just lonely." Something flickered in his eyes, so faint it could have been imagined. He looked back at her resume. "Your degree's incomplete." 2 years of business school," she said. "Then I ran out of money. But I didn't run out of reasons to work." He glanced up again, surprised by her honesty, or maybe by the steadiness in her voice. She wasn't pretending to be perfect. She wasn't pretending at all. Outside, the city traffic groaned like an ocean under glass. Inside, Cole closed the folder. At Hartman and Vale, he said punctuality means respect. Details mean discipline. The phone rings only to solve problems. "Can you keep up? I can try." "Try? I don't promise perfection," she said, just persistence. For a moment, no one breathed. Then Cole leaned back, assessing her with the detachment of a man studying a puzzle he hadn't meant to find interesting. "You're not the type I usually hire," he said. "Maybe that's why I'll last longer," she replied. That earned a faint lift of his brow, half an acknowledgement, half a warning. "Fine," he said finally. "Trial basis. 2 weeks. No tardiness. No improvisation. No humor." "Understood," Quinn said brightly. "Except for the no humor part. I think that one might kill me." He ignored the comment. "Start now." Now as in today. He met her eyes. Is there another today besides now? By noon, the rumor had already spread. The new assistant made it through the interview alive. Quinn sat at a spotless white desk outside his glass office, organizing files she didn't understand and pretending she belonged there. Behind the closed door, Cole's voice carried through the intercom, controlled, cold, efficient. Every word reminded her how fragile her place here was. She'd promised herself she'd stop running from hard things, from bosses, from heartbreak, from fear itself. And yet, every time his shadow passed the glass, something in her stomach tightened, like the body's instinct before a storm. At 3:17, the phone rang. Mr. Hartman's desk. "Quinn speaking," she said, trying to sound professional. "Cancel my meeting with Mr. Sloan." His voice came through the receiver even and low. "And Parker?" "Yes. You still have lipstick on your tooth." The line clicked dead. Quinn touched her teeth, mortified. Nothing. He was teasing her. She looked toward the closed door, and for the first time smiled for real. Maybe the Ice King had a pulse after all. That evening, the office emptied. Lights dimmed to blue. Quinn stayed finishing the day's impossible checklist. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to prove she could. Inside the CEO's office, Cole worked alone as he always did. The city lights painted his reflection in the glass. A man surrounded by everything, yet untouched by all of it. He heard a faint laugh outside, a soft voice humming to herself as she typed. For the briefest second, he paused. It had been years since laughter existed this close to him without demanding something in return. He pushed the thought aside, focusing on his spreadsheets, order numbers, clarity. Feelings only complicated efficiency. He'd built an empire on not needing anyone. Still, when he finally looked up, Quinn was gone. On her empty desk lay a small notebook. The cover was worn, the edges slightly bent. He shouldn't have opened it, but curiosity slipped through the cracks of discipline. Inside, in careful handwriting, Day 1. Learn the language of ice, and don't let my heart freeze trying. Cole closed the notebook quietly, placing it back where he found it. His hand lingered for a moment, then withdrew like someone touching fire for the first time. The next morning, the elevator doors opened to Quinn's reflection in the glass, hair pulled back neatly, eyes bright despite the lack of sleep. "Good morning, Mr. Hartman," she greeted. "You're early," he noted, overcorrecting. He studied her as if testing her words for sincerity. "We'll see if it lasts." Quinn smiled. "Guess you'll have to keep me long enough to find out." He turned away before she could see the corner of his mouth twitch the smallest, most reluctant ghost of a smile. By mid-morning, Cole's calendar was flawless, his inbox organized, and the office quieter than usual. Too quiet. He caught himself glancing through the glass, not at the clock, but at the woman beyond it. She typed fast, occasionally muttering to herself. She had a habit of tapping her pen against her lower lip when thinking. Distracting. He didn't get distracted. Ever. Cole leaned back, exhaled slowly, and tried to name what it was. Annoyance, curiosity, unease. Maybe all three. But mostly it was noise. And after years of silence, noise felt alive. At 5:30, Quinn gathered her things. Her phone buzzed, a text from her best friend Mia. "How's day 1 with the famous iceberg?" Quinn typed back, "Alive." Mostly frozen, but alive. She hesitated before adding one more line. "He's not what they say." Then she stopped herself, deleted the last part, and closed her phone. It was too early for intuition. Too early to read warmth into coldness. Still, as she stepped into the elevator, she looked back through the glass one last time. Cole was standing by the window, city lights reflecting in his eyes, like fragments of something once broken. He turned slightly, as if sensing her gaze, and for a heartbeat, they were both caught in that stillness, the hum of machines and distant traffic between them. Then the elevator doors closed. That night, Cole stayed late again. The city below throbbed with neon. He opened the final email, signed the last document, and shut down his computer. The office was silent, except for the faint memory of her voice earlier that morning, soft but certain. "Maybe you'll have to keep me long enough to find out." He almost smiled again. Almost. Far below, in a small apartment with flickering lights and cracked paint, Quinn wrote in her notebook, "Day 1. Survived. He's impossible, and maybe a little broken, but so am I." She stared at the words until the ink bled slightly, as if the page absorbed the truth she couldn't yet say aloud. Outside her window, Chicago pulsed loud, alive, unpredictable. She didn't know yet that somewhere above the same skyline, a man who claimed to feel nothing was already thinking about the woman who'd walked in late and left him strangely awake. And tomorrow, she would discover why no assistant ever lasted a month. The second morning began quieter, but not calmer. Quinn stood before the glass tower of Hartman and Vale, watching her reflection blur in the mirrored surface. It was barely 7 a.m., and she was early again, determined not to let the Ice King find her unprepared. The cold air bit through her coat, yet it steadied her heartbeat. She'd survived day 1. Day 2 would be different, she hoped. Inside, the building hummed awake elevators. Side computers clicked alive, and the faint scent of disinfectant mixed with expensive cologne. When she reached her desk, everything was already in order. Files, stacked schedules, printed pens, aligned by size and shade. Cole Hartman's world was a study in symmetry. Her job was not to disturb it. And yet, she already had. Cole's door was half open. He was standing by the window phone in one hand, the other pressed to his temple. "No, Harold. I don't want a safe option. I want a correct one," he said, voice even but threaded with steel. He ended the call, set the phone down and turned. Their eyes met for half a second. "Morning, Mr. Hartman," she greeted. "Parker," he replied, as if saying her name were an inconvenience. Then, noticing the steaming cup in her hand, he frowned. "What's that peace offering?" she said lightly, placing it on his desk. "Coffee. 2 sugars, 1 cream." "I don't drink coffee," he said flatly. "Oh." Quinn blinked. "Do you prefer tea then?" "No." "Water. Green tea," he corrected. "No sugar. No milk. No improvisation." Her lips curved despite herself. "Noted. You sound like an instruction manual." Cole stared at her unamused. "You can go now." She turned, fighting the urge to laugh. Instruction manual. If he weren't so infuriatingly handsome, he'd almost be funny. By mid-morning, Quinn's to-do list had doubled. Cole's rhythm was relentless meetings, stacked like dominoes, every task timed to the minute. She'd never seen anyone move with such precision or such distance. He spoke little, and when he did, it was never about anything that mattered. Still, something about him fascinated her. Not attraction, not yet. Curiosity, maybe, like watching a locked door and wondering what could possibly be inside. Around noon, a problem appeared literally. Ms. Parker said Diane from the reception desk, peeking around the corner. "There's a delivery man downstairs with a mahogany desk. Says it's for Mr. Hartman." Desk. Quinn frowned. He didn't mention one. He never does. Diane sighed. Maybe it's a mistake. But he's refusing to leave until someone signs. Quinn hesitated. Cole was in a meeting. She didn't want to interrupt him over furniture. How hard could it be? She took the elevator down. The delivery man was red-faced and sweating beside a huge desk that looked like it belonged in a mansion. "You're Mr. Hartman's assistant?" he asked. "Unfortunately, yes." "Then sign here. Wrong address or not, I can't take it back." The man looked exhausted. Quinn glanced at the polished wood, the brass edges. It looked expensive but harmless. "Fine," she said, signing his clipboard. "Leave it by the reception." 20 minutes later, Cole stepped out of his office and froze. "Why is there a mahogany desk in my lobby?" he asked. Quinn looked up from her computer, trying to sound confident. "A delivery mix-up. The driver said it was for you. I didn't order a desk." She smiled carefully. "Neither did I. But he looked like he might die if I didn't sign." Parker, he said slowly, sweat is not evidence of honesty. Her mouth twitched. Good line. Mind if I use it? Cole closed his eyes briefly, counting to 3, as if summoning divine patience. Find out where it belongs, and get it out of my building. Yes, sir. As he turned away, Quinn caught a faint sigh escape him, more weary than angry. Somehow, that made it worse. By late afternoon, she'd called half of Chicago's furniture suppliers. No one claimed the desk. In the middle of her chaos, she heard his voice, low, sharp, controlled through the cracked door. Something about a contract penalties, millions in loss. Her curiosity overrode caution. She knocked softly. Mr. Hartman. Busy, he said without looking up. I know. But is it about the Miller clause? His head snapped up. How do you know about that? I heard you mention it, she said, stepping closer. I studied corporate law for 2 years before switching majors. There's probably a loophole in the extraordinary conditions section. Cole's eyes narrowed, skeptical, yet intrigued. He turned the monitor toward her. Show me. Quinn hesitated only a second before taking the chair beside him. His chair, technically. He didn't protest. Her fingers danced across the touchpad, scrolling through dense legal text. Here, she said, pointing. Clause 18C cancels 14B, if external interference is proven. Do you have emails showing they changed specifications after signing? Cole blinked, then searched his inbox. 3 messages matched. He read in silence, then leaned back. This cancels the penalty, he murmured. You just saved us nearly $3 million. Quinn smiled, half nervous, half proud. I'll add that to my resume under accidental genius. He looked at her, something unreadable flickering behind his composure. Good work. 2 words. But from Cole Hartman, they landed like sunlight on ice. That night, Quinn stayed late again. The office emptied, city lights blinking through the glass. She was on the phone with the delivery company, finally locating the rightful owner of the infamous desk, when Cole appeared at her door. Still here? He asked. Apparently so, she said, setting down the receiver. Your mystery desk belongs to 24D. They're sending someone to pick it up. He nodded once, then hesitated. You didn't have to stay. I wanted to, she said simply. He studied her for a long moment, then crossed the room to his own desk. You'll learn that wanting to doesn't matter here. Maybe it should, she said softly. Cole didn't answer, but his hand paused on the stack of papers he was pretending to read. When she finally left the hallway, lights flickered behind her. Cole remained staring at the empty doorway. For years, he'd prided himself on control, on never letting anyone close enough to make a difference. But now, there was this woman, this chaos in heels, who walked into his life 23 minutes late and somehow rearranged the air itself. He should have fired her. Instead, he found himself listening for her laugh in the morning. The next day began with rain. Quinn stopped by the lobby cafe and ordered a large latte, 2 sugars, a touch of cinnamon. Maybe caffeine could thaw the day. She knocked on Cole's office door, heart steady. Morning, Mr. Hartman, she said, placing the cup on his desk. Peace offering, take 2. He looked at the cup as though it were a threat. What's in it? Coffee. I don't drink coffee with milk. Okay. Without milk, I don't drink coffee with sugar. Without sugar, then I don't drink coffee. Quinn blinked. You don't drink coffee? Correct. Her lips parted. Sir, that's un-American. He ignored her. If you'll excuse me. Do you even sleep? She interrupted, half teasing. Or do you just recharge overnight? His gaze lifted slowly. Excuse me. You heard me, she said, smiling despite herself. You work 16 hours a day, eat like a machine, and drink tea with no flavor. You're basically a robot. A pause. The air thickened. Cole stood calm but dangerous. "Is that your professional evaluation? Personal observation?" she said. "Chin up. You could use a little more human software." For the first time since she'd met him, his lips curved. Not quite a smile, but something near it. "Robots," he said quietly. "Don't make mistakes." Or feel anything, she shot back. Their eyes locked heat, replacing the cold between them. Then just as suddenly, he looked away. "I'll have Diane order you a manual on appropriate office behavior. Make sure it's in hardback," she said. "I love a good challenge." He exhaled, half annoyance, half disbelief. "You're impossible. Yet here I am." By noon, the tension had shifted, no longer hostile, but charged with something else. Cole caught himself watching her as she worked. The way she bit her lip, when concentrating, how she scribbled notes with fierce energy, the faint hum of music she thought no one could hear. It should have irritated him. Instead, it made him forget what irritation felt like. He didn't like that. At 5 p.m., as rain turned to sleet outside, Cole looked up from his desk. "Parker." She turned. "Yes." "Next time," he said, voice softer than usual. "Don't bring coffee." "Understood," she replied, hiding a grin. "Bring green tea." Quinn froze. The words hung in the air like a truce. Green tea. No sugar, no milk, no improvisation, he added. She nodded. No promises. When she left his office, Cole stared at the closed door for a long while, realizing something subtle but undeniable had shifted. The lines he'd drawn between order and chaos, duty and desire, were beginning to blur. That night, Quinn wrote in her notebook, Day 2. He doesn't drink coffee, but he might drink peace. Maybe even kindness, one cup at a time. She paused, tapping the pen against her lip. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city lights shimmered on the wet streets, alive and uncertain, just like whatever this was becoming. She closed the notebook, unaware that in the apartment above the skyline, Cole Hartman was also awake, staring at his untouched cup of green tea. And for the first time in years, it wasn't the numbers keeping him up. It was her. By Friday evening, the city had slipped into the amber hush of early winter. Chicago's skyline shimmered through rain-streaked glass lights, smearing into watercolor gold. Inside the 32nd floor, Hartman and Vale prepared for its annual company gala, a night of polite laughter, stiff champagne, and the illusion of warmth. Quinn stared at the invitation for the 100th time. Attendance mandatory. Dress code smart casual. Whoever wrote that had never been poor, she thought. There was nothing casual about trying to look expensive on a budget. In a thrift shop 2 blocks from her apartment, she stood under flickering fluorescent light, while an older woman with a tape measure circled her like a quiet hurricane. "Office party?" the woman asked, eyes sharp but kind. "Something like that," Quinn said. "My boss will be there." "Ah," the woman said, selecting a red dress from the rack, one that looked like it could cause trouble. "Then wear this." Quinn frowned. "It's a lot of red." The woman smiled knowingly. Sometimes red isn't a color. It's armor. At the gala, the ballroom glowed with chandeliers and polished glass. Strings whispered in the background. Polite laughter filled the air. Everyone sparkled. Everyone performed. Quinn, in her scarlet dress, felt like an accidental flame in a field of neutral tones. She spotted Cole across the room, before he saw her, tall, immaculate, talking to a group of investors with a champagne flute. He wasn't drinking. He looked as if he'd been carved from the same marble as the pillars around them. When his eyes finally found her, something flickered in them. Not surprise exactly, but recognition. Like seeing fire for the first time after years of cold. She moved through the crowd, careful, steady. Halfway there, her heel caught on the edge of the carpet. The tray of martinis she hadn't noticed wobbled in slow motion, and time fractured. The glass clinked. One olive rolled across the floor, like punctuation to her humiliation. A few drops of liquor splattered across Cole's sleeve. "Oh, God," Quinn blurted, grabbing a napkin. "I'm so sorry." Cole looked down at his arm, then at her. The room had gone silent. Every eye waited for his reaction. "Are you all right?" he asked calmly. "Not what did you do? Not you ruined my suit. Just that." Quinn blinked, breath caught halfway between apology and disbelief. Yes. You're not mad. I have other suits." His tone was light, almost dry. The surrounding executives, robbed of their scandal, drifted away. Quinn stood there, napkin still in hand, heart beating too fast. Cole's gaze softened just slightly. "The dress suits you," he said, then walked toward the bar. For a moment she forgot how to breathe. Later she found him near the corner of the ballroom, away from the laughter near the grand piano that sat unused. "You're hiding," she said, approaching with a glass of sparkling water. "I'm observing," he corrected. "It's quieter here. You don't like parties. I don't like noise pretending to be connection." She smiled faintly. "Then you hate people like me." He turned, brow raised. "And what are you?" "The kind who talks to fill silence." Cole's expression shifted, almost tender. "Maybe silence doesn't need filling." "Maybe it does," she said softly. "Silence can be lonely." Something in his eyes flickered, that same fracture she'd seen before, like a memory pressing against the surface. She gestured toward the piano. "Do you play?" "Not anymore." "Why not? I grew up," he said simply. She tilted her head. "Music isn't something you outgrow." "It was my mother's rule," he said. "She believed music was a distraction." "Did you?" He paused, then answered quietly. "No, but I learned to pretend I did." Quinn ran her fingertips over the keys, pressing one softly. The note lingered in the air, fragile, searching. "Teach me something," she said. He hesitated. "This isn't the place." "No one's listening," she said. "They're too busy pretending to be important." A reluctant exhale escaped him. "Fine," he said, moving beside her. "Sit." She did the red silk brushing against the black lacquer of the bench. Cole placed his hand over hers, guiding her fingers to the keys. His skin was warm, steady, commanding. "Gentle," he murmured. "Let the key meet you halfway." She pressed again, softer. The sound changed, rounder, clearer. "Better," he said. She turned to him. "You remember more than you admit." He met her gaze, and for the first time didn't look away. "I remember everything," he said quietly. The moment stretched, fragile, breathless. The air between them hummed, like another note neither dared to play. A laugh from across the room broke the spell. Cole blinked, stepping back, the armor sliding neatly into place. "You should eat something," he said, his voice careful again. "The hors d'oeuvres are decent." "You should let yourself enjoy something," she replied, standing. "You might be surprised." He didn't answer. He only watched her go, the red of her dress catching light as she disappeared into the crowd. An hour later, Quinn found herself cornered by Rick from accounting, slightly drunk, overly friendly. "You look incredible tonight," he slurred, leaning too close. "Thanks," she said politely, trying to step aside, but he blocked her path. "Come on, just one dance. I'm fine, really. Don't be shy." His hand brushed her arm. Before she could react, Cole's voice cut through the noise. She said no. Rick turned, startled. Cole stood only a few feet away, calm but with a kind of stillness that promised consequences. "Relax, boss," Rick said, smirking. "Just trying to be friendly." "You're drunk," Cole said. "Go home." Rick's smile faded. He muttered something under his breath and stumbled off, leaving Quinn breathless. "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did," Cole said firmly. "You're my employee." Her lips curved. That sounded almost protective. He looked at her for a long second. Maybe it was. They found themselves outside the ballroom, standing near a tall window overlooking the city. The music inside faded to a dull echo. "You're different tonight," she said softly. "So are you. I'm usually clumsy and underdressed." "You're still clumsy," he said, and she laughed, the sound light in the cold air. "You're impossible," she murmured. "And yet, here you are," he replied. For a moment, neither spoke. The view of Chicago stretched endlessly below, streets glowing like veins of light. "Do you ever stop working?" she asked. "When I sleep." "And when you can't, I think," he said. "About what?" "About how to stop thinking." She smiled faintly. "That's very on brand for a robot." He turned toward her, eyes narrowing just slightly. "Still calling me that, until you prove you're human. And what would that take?" She stepped closer, close enough to see her reflection in his eyes. "A feeling. Any feeling." His jaw tightened. "Be careful what you ask for, Parker." Her pulse skipped. "Maybe I like danger. I've noticed." The air between them thickened, not just attraction, but something deeper, more dangerous recognition. The quiet ache of two people who'd been alone too long, now standing too close. He looked away first. "You should go home," he said. "So should you." "I live here," he said dryly. "Exactly my point." She smiled, turned, and walked toward the elevator. He stayed by the window, watching her reflection fade in the glass red, dissolving into the city lights. When the doors closed behind her, he exhaled slowly, as though holding his breath since she'd walked in. Later that night, back in her apartment, Quinn sat on the edge of her bed, heels kicked off, hair undone. The city outside pulsed like a restless heartbeat. She opened her notebook. Day 3. He plays the piano, like he's afraid of remembering what it means to feel. And for a moment, I think he almost did. She paused, then added, "Maybe so did I." Meanwhile, Cole sat alone in his office, the gala long over. The building was quiet again, the way he liked it. Or used to. He walked to the piano in the corner of the executive lounge, the same model as the one at the ballroom, untouched for years. He lifted the lid, pressed one key. The sound was soft, trembling, imperfect. He closed his eyes. In the echo of that single note, he saw her, the red dress, the laughter, the fearless warmth that had slipped under his skin. He pressed another key, then another. Slowly, the melody returned, hesitant at first, then steady. The sound filled the glass room like something long buried, learning how to breathe again. Across the city, in her dark apartment, Quinn turned off the light. For some reason, sleep didn't come easily. She felt restless, aware, as if someone somewhere was playing a song meant for her. And if she'd been there to hear it, she would have recognized it instantly, the sound of a man remembering what it was to be alive. Monday arrived in the color of steel. The city outside shimmered with a faint frost, and the office hummed with quiet anticipation, the kind that comes before something shifts. Quinn sat at her desk, pretending to focus on the morning schedule. But her thoughts kept slipping toward Friday night, the piano, the window, the way Cole had looked at her when the rest of the world fell away. She shouldn't have felt anything. He was her boss. He was impossible. And yet, for a few seconds, she had seen warmth in him, fragile, unguarded, like a flame trapped behind glass. Now, under the harsh office lights, that moment felt like a dream she wasn't supposed to remember. The intercom crackled. "Parker, my office." Her pulse jumped. "Yes, Mr. Hartman." Inside, Cole stood by the window, his usual armor in place. Black suit, perfect tie, expression carved from calm. But his voice carried a faint edge. "My mother is coming to lunch," he said. "Oh," Quinn blinked. "That's nice. No, it's catastrophic." She blinked again. "As in emotional catastrophe or corporate?" "Both," he replied dryly. "She's been trying to arrange a dinner with a potential fiancé for months." Quinn hesitated. "And you need a shield," he said. "A distraction. Someone she wouldn't approve of." She raised an eyebrow. "You're asking me to pretend to be my girlfriend," he said flatly. Silence stretched between them like a tripwire. Then Quinn laughed softly, disbelieving. "You can't be serious." "Completely," he said, unfazed. "One lunch. No romantic implications. Purely strategic." "Strategic," she repeated, incredulous. "Like a human chess piece, if that helps you understand." She crossed her arms. "And what exactly do I get out of this strategy, raise?" "Try again." He hesitated, then said, "Lunch, and my undivided cooperation for a week." She smiled faintly. "You make it sound like a peace treaty." "Temporary alliance," he corrected. Quinn studied him for a moment, the man who never asked for anything, now asking her to lie for him. And for reasons she didn't fully understand, she nodded. "Fine. But if this goes wrong, you're buying me new shoes." The restaurant looked like it had been built for intimidation. Everything gleamed, the cutlery, the marble floors, even the air seemed polished. Quinn had spent the subway ride rehearsing small talk and regretting every decision that had led her here. When Cole's mother arrived, Quinn understood instantly why he called her a catastrophe. Eleanor Hartman was elegance sharpened into weaponry. Perfect hair, diamond watch eyes that measured everything, including Quinn. "Colton," she said, kissing the air near his cheek. "And this must be—" "Quinn Parker," Cole said smoothly, his hand at the small of her back. "My girlfriend." The word fell like glass. Eleanor's smile didn't reach her eyes. Enchanting. "Pleasure to meet you," Quinn said, extending a hand. Eleanor shook it briefly, coolly, like testing the temperature of unfamiliar water. They sat. The waiter appeared, bowing as if before royalty. Eleanor ordered in fluent French. Quinn panicked, choosing something she couldn't pronounce. Cole ordered salmon. Of course he did. So Eleanor began sipping her wine. "How did you two meet?" Quinn looked at Cole. His eyes said, "Improvise carefully." "At the office," Quinn said. "He was my boss. I was late. It was love at first lecture." Eleanor blinked. Cole choked softly on his water. "How romantic," Eleanor said, tone glacial. "And what do your parents do, Ms. Parker?" "My dad's a mechanic," Quinn said evenly. "My mom works at a library." "How quaint," Eleanor murmured. Quinn smiled a little too sweetly. "I think so too." Eleanor's gaze sharpened. "And where did you study Ohio State?" Quinn said. "Didn't finish. Ran out of tuition before ambition." Cole's shoe nudged hers under the table, a silent, careful. But Quinn didn't back down. She wasn't ashamed of the truth. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "No degree. No family connections. You must be quite persuasive." Quinn leaned forward. "Or maybe your son appreciates people who say what they mean." Eleanor's lips curved. That would be new. The meal unfolded like a duel disguised as small talk. Every word was a test. Every smile a defense. Quinn could feel Cole tense beside her, caught between admiration and panic. When dessert arrived, Eleanor turned to her son. "You've changed, Colton." "In what way?" he asked carefully. "You're softer," she said. "It doesn't suit you." "Maybe it's not softness," Quinn said before she could stop herself. "Maybe it's honesty." Eleanor regarded her for a long moment. "You speak freely. Only when it matters." "Does it matter now?" Quinn met her gaze. To him, yes. Cole froze. His hand brushed hers under the table, a warning or gratitude she couldn't tell. Eleanor finally smiled, faint but genuine. "Interesting. You're not at all what I expected." "Neither is your son," Quinn said lightly. "Turns out he's human." Cole closed his eyes briefly. Eleanor laughed. It was the first real laugh of the afternoon. "You're bold," she said. "I like that." By the time they left the restaurant, the air outside felt thinner, as if both had been holding their breath for hours. "Well," Quinn said, walking beside him, "that was not a disaster." "She liked you," Cole admitted, sounding almost surprised. "She liked that I wasn't terrified of her." He looked sideways at her. "You weren't." "Of course I was," she said, smiling. "I just didn't show it." He stopped at the corner, the afternoon sun cutting gold through the glass buildings. "You didn't have to protect me in there." "I didn't," she said softly. "I just told her the truth." "Which was that you're human." He held her gaze too long, too direct. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because I might start believing you." They walked back to the car in silence. But it wasn't the cold kind anymore. Something had changed, subtle, irreversible. A line crossed, not with touch, but with understanding. When the driver pulled up, Cole opened the door for her. She hesitated. "Do you ever stop performing?" He frowned. "What do you mean? You act like everything's strategy. Like feelings are liabilities. Maybe that's why you need fake girlfriends, because real ones might ask for something real." Cole said nothing, but his hand tightened on the car door. She sighed and got in. He followed, jaw set, the silence between them heavy. Back at the office, Quinn tried to slip away to her desk, but Cole stopped her at the elevator. "Parker," he said quietly. She turned. "Yes, thank you. For today." Her voice softened. "You're welcome." He looked like he wanted to say more, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he just nodded and walked away. Quinn watched him go, the echo of his footsteps following her long after he disappeared behind the glass. That night in his penthouse, Cole poured himself a glass of wine he wouldn't finish. The city below glittered, indifferent. He had done what he always did: control, plan, execute. And yet, for the first time, he felt completely out of control. His mother's parting words lingered. "You're softer. It doesn't suit you." But maybe it did. Maybe that was the problem. He thought of Quinn, her laugh, her defiance, the way she'd faced Eleanor without flinching. He thought of her calling him human. No one had ever said that before, not like it was a compliment. He poured the untouched wine down the sink. In her apartment, Quinn kicked off her shoes and collapsed on the couch. Her heart still raced, not from fear, but from something warmer. She replayed the lunch, the lies, the glances, the moment his hand brushed hers. It wasn't real. It couldn't be. But God, it had felt like it. She opened her notebook. Day 4. Played girlfriend. Failed at pretending. Maybe some lies are just truths we're not ready to admit. The next morning when she arrived at work, Cole was already there. He looked different. Not relaxed, but less frozen. He handed her a folder, a new project, a new challenge. And as she reached for it, their fingers brushed an accident too small to mean anything, yet too charged to mean nothing. Quinn met his eyes. Good morning, he said softly. Is it? She asked. He smiled just slightly. It might be. And for the first time since she'd met him, she believed him. That night, neither of them slept well. He dreamt of red silk and laughter. She dreamt of pianos and unspoken words. And somewhere between midnight and dawn, they both realized the same quiet truth. Some lies are harmless, but this one had already changed everything. The week after the fake lunch unfolded like a strange dream, half real, half rehearsed. Cole had gone back to being himself, efficient, distant, immaculate. And yet, something between them had changed. He didn't bark orders anymore. He asked. He listened. And sometimes when he thought no one was watching, he smiled small, accidental things that disappeared before she could decide if they were real. Quinn sat at her desk late one evening, entering figures into a spreadsheet that blurred into nonsense. The office was almost empty, shadows stretching long against the glass. Cole's voice broke the quiet. You're still here. She looked up. So are you. He leaned against the doorframe, tie, loosened sleeves rolled. He looked less like a CEO and more like a man learning how to breathe again. I could say the same thing you said last time, he said. You don't have to stay. I know, she replied, typing another line. But if I go home, I'll start thinking. He tilted his head. About what? She hesitated. About things I probably shouldn't. Such as... She smiled faintly. You. A pause. The air shifted. His expression didn't change, but something in him stilled. That's unwise, he said quietly. Probably, she admitted. But it's not like I can turn it off. He exhaled through his nose, a mix of frustration and something softer. You shouldn't confuse proximity for meaning. Maybe you shouldn't confuse control for safety, she countered. Their eyes met, and the silence between them felt electric, like the moment before a storm breaks. He finally looked away. Go home, Parker. Good night, Mr. Hartman, she said too evenly. That night, she dreamed of him again, but not the man in suits and marble offices. In her dream, he was barefoot, sitting by a piano, in a half-lit room, playing something soft and unfinished. When he looked up, his eyes weren't cold. They were the color of confession. She woke with her heart racing and no idea why tears had touched her pillow. The next morning, an email from HR shattered the fragile peace. Subject: compliance inquiry, relationship disclosure. Quinn froze. Her name was on it. So was Cole's. Her stomach dropped. Someone had reported them. Rumors probably about the fake relationship, the lunch, the looks that lingered too long. When she walked into the office, whispers followed like wind through glass. By noon, she was summoned upstairs. Cole stood by the boardroom window, hands clasped, expression unreadable. The HR director was seated across from him, polite but firm. This is routine, the woman said. Given recent reports, we need confirmation that no policy violations have occurred. Of course, Cole said calmly. There haven't been any. Quinn's throat tightened. The woman turned to her. Ms. Parker. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Every instinct screamed to tell the truth, but the truth was complicated. She wasn't his girlfriend, but she'd played one. She wasn't in love with him, but maybe she was starting to be. Cole's voice cut through the silence. She's not involved with me personally, he said before she could answer. The reports are inaccurate. Something inside Quinn cracked. Not because it wasn't true, but because it almost was. After HR left, the silence between them filled the whole room. You didn't let me speak, she said finally. It wasn't necessary, he replied, keeping his back to her. I could have handled it. I know. But you shouldn't have to. That's not your choice, Cole. He turned then, eyes sharp, jaw tight. It's my company, and I'm not your property." The words hit harder than she intended. They hung there burning. He took a step toward her. "This whatever you think this is can't happen." "I didn't ask for it to happen," she said quietly. "It just did. You're confusing kindness for interest." Her laugh was small, brittle. "And you're confusing fear for logic." For a heartbeat, she thought he'd say something, apologize, deny, feel. Instead, he walked past her. "Go home, Parker." But this time she didn't move. "Why do you keep pushing me away?" she asked. "What are you so afraid of?" He stopped at the door. "I don't want to become my father." The confession slipped out before he could stop it. She froze. "What?" He turned, eyes darker now, voice low. He loved someone who made him forget the rules. It destroyed everything. Then maybe the rules were wrong. Maybe, he said. But they kept me alive. Then he left. Quinn sat alone in the boardroom long after he was gone, staring at the city below. So bright, so unreachable. She should have been angry. Instead, she felt hollow. The worst kind of pain wasn't rejection. It was being protected from something you wanted to risk. Days passed in a strange stillness. They spoke only when necessary. His emails were formal again. Her smiles were practiced. It should have made things easier. It didn't. One night as she packed her things, Diane from reception leaned over. "Rough week." "You could say that." "Cheer up," Diane said kindly. "You survived longer than anyone else." Quinn smiled thinly. "That's a low bar." "Still a record," Diane said and walked away. That same night, Quinn stopped by a small cafe near her apartment. The piano in the corner reminded her of him. She ordered chamomile tea and tried to read, but her mind kept replaying that look in his eyes, the one right before he built the walls back up. By the time she got home, she'd made a decision. If he wanted silence, fine, but she'd have the last word. The next morning, she handed in her resignation. It was brief, polite, heartbreakingly professional. "Thank you for the opportunity. My last day will be Friday." She left it on his desk before he arrived. By noon, the entire office knew. Diane hugged her. The interns whispered. Cole didn't call her in, didn't email, didn't stop her. That hurt more than anything. Friday came. She packed her things in a small box, just a mug, her notebook, and the fountain pen he'd once lent her. The elevator dinged softly. He was standing there. "Leaving early?" he asked. "It's after 6. I meant permanently." She nodded. "I figured you'd heard." He looked at her for a long time. "You could have told me. You could have asked. Would you have stayed if I had?" She smiled sadly. "Would you have wanted me to?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence said everything. He followed her out to the lobby, footsteps echoing like ghosts. The city glowed beyond the glass doors, night pressing against the world they'd built out of pretense and almosts. "Parker," he said quietly. She turned, holding the box close. "Yes, I'm sorry." "For what?" "For everything I can't say." Her eyes softened, but she shook her head. "Then say something. Anything." He opened his mouth, but no words came. The silence stretched between them again, heavier now, like a final verdict. "Right," she said quietly. "That's what I thought." She turned and walked away. That night, Cole sat alone in his office, lights, dimmed, rain streaking the windows. The city blurred beyond the glass. He replayed every moment, the fake lunch, the piano, her laughter, her anger, and then her last words. "Say something. Anything." He poured a glass of whiskey and didn't drink it. Instead, he walked to the piano and sat down. His hands hovered over the keys but didn't move. He couldn't play, not without her. In her apartment across the city, Quinn opened her notebook one last time. Day 5. He said nothing. Maybe silence is just another kind of answer. But I still wish it had sounded like goodbye. She closed the book, turned off the lamp, and let the darkness settle around her. Outside, the rain fell harder, each drop a quiet echo of everything left unsaid. In the weeks that followed, Hartman and Vale kept running immaculate as always. Cole buried himself in work. The world believed he was fine. But late at night, when no one was watching, he found himself checking the desk outside his office, still expecting her to be there. And every time he saw it empty, something inside him fractured a little more. 3 months passed. Enough time for the city to change seasons. Not enough for Cole to forget her. Hartman and Vale ran smoother than ever. The report's perfect meetings, efficient silence, absolute. But efficiency had never felt so hollow. Every morning he passed the empty desk outside his office. HR had filled the position twice since she left. Both assistants quit within weeks. Too much pressure, they said. Too cold. Too impossible. He didn't correct them. He didn't want another assistant. He wanted her. One Friday, Eleanor Hartman stopped by unannounced, as mothers like her often did, carrying judgment like perfume. "You look exhausted," she said, walking into his office without waiting for permission. "Are you still punishing yourself for whatever you did to that girl?" Cole looked up sharply. "You've been talking to HR." "I talk to people who talk," she said simply. "It's how mothers survive their sons." He sighed. "It's over." "Is it?" she asked. "Or did you just decide it had to be?" He didn't answer. Eleanor studied him softer now. "You inherited your father's brilliance," she said, "and his fear. He believed love would ruin him. It did, because he kept running from it until it finally caught him." She adjusted her gloves. "Don't make the same mistake." When she left, the scent of her perfume lingered sharp and familiar like old grief. Cole sat there a long time, staring at the skyline. The city gleamed like a machine that never slept. He'd built his life to mirror it, flawless, soulless, unbreakable. Except it was breaking him. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Quinn Parker's world had shrunk and bloomed all at once. She now worked at a small nonprofit called the Bridge Home, helping rehabilitate abandoned animals and fund therapy programs for children. The pay was terrible, the hours unpredictable. But for the first time in years, her life felt honest. She laughed more, slept better, almost believed she was over him. Almost. Her favorite part of the job was the adoption events, watching small miracles unfold when people found the creatures they didn't know they needed. Her least favorite part, the animals that no one wanted. That's how she met Bacon, a tiny, round, pink piglet with a snout too big for his body and eyes too small to resist. He had been rescued from a backyard breeder. No one wanted him. Too loud, too messy, too inconvenient. "Guess we've got that in common," she whispered, scratching behind his ear. Unwanted, but still cute. Bacon squealed approvingly. A week later, she brought him to a charity fair downtown. The crowd was lively kids running, music playing. She set Bacon in a small playpen and went to fetch flyers from the truck. When she came back, the playpen was empty. "Bacon?" she called, panic rising. "Bacon." The piglet was gone. She dashed through the stalls, scanning under tables behind tents. And then she heard it, a surprised voice, low and unmistakable. "You've got to be kidding me." Cole Hartman stood near the flower stand, immaculate as ever, holding a squirming pink piglet in his arms, like a confused hostage. For a full second, Quinn forgot how to breathe. He looked at her, really looked, and something flickered across his face. Disbelief, relief, guilt, longing. All at once. "Parker," he said finally, as if saying her name after months of silence felt like an exhale. "You lost your pig," You found him, she said softly. They stood there a heartbeat too long, city noise fading around them. Bacon squealed again, wriggling. Cole grimaced. He's sticky. He's affectionate, she corrected, taking the pig back into her arms. That's how living things show emotion. Some of us prefer email, he muttered. She almost smiled. Almost. For a moment, neither moved. 3 months of silence pressed between them, heavy with everything unsaid. Why are you here? She asked finally. Business luncheon, he said. I didn't know you worked here, she finished. I don't work here. I work near here. Big difference. He nodded slowly, eyes flicking to the shelter's logo on her shirt. So you left the corporate world for pigs. I left it for peace, she said. The pigs came later. Something passed through his expression, part guilt, part admiration. He looked at her like a man standing outside his own life, realizing the door had closed behind him. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. She blinked. For what? For being a coward, he said. For saying nothing when it mattered. The air thinned. The noise of the fair faded. Quinn's heart stuttered once, then steadied. You don't get to show up after 3 months and say that like it fixes everything. I know, he said, but I needed to say it anyway. She looked at him, the perfect suit, the careful posture, the eyes that had learned to unlearn warmth. She wanted to be angry. Instead, she was tired. Do you even know what you're apologizing for? She asked. You didn't break a rule, Cole. You broke me. He flinched. Not visibly, but enough. I thought keeping you out of my mess was protecting you. It wasn't, she said. It was punishment, dressed as logic. He nodded once, eyes dropping. You're right. Then why does it still feel like you're defending yourself? I'm not, he said, voice low. I'm just not good at this. Feeling losing. Bacon sneezed loudly, breaking the silence. Quinn laughed despite herself. Seems like he doesn't like tension, she said. Maybe you two have something in common. Cole's lips twitched. He's less stubborn, doubtful. For the first time, they smiled at the same moment, small, uncertain, real. He gestured toward the nearby coffee stand. Can we talk? Properly. Quinn hesitated, then nodded. Fine. But if you say, no sugar, no milk, I'm leaving. He almost smiled. I've upgraded. Jasmine tea now. They sat at a corner table overlooking the park. Bacon dozed in her lap, oblivious to the history hanging in the air. Cole wrapped his hands around the paper cup like it was a tether. I've replayed that day 100 times, he said. HR, the silence you walking out. I kept thinking there'd be a version where I said something different, but every time I froze. Because you were scared, she said quietly. Yes, he admitted, and because I thought I didn't deserve another chance to not be. She studied him, his posture still rigid, even as his eyes softened. You know you don't have to be the man your father was. You get to rewrite the ending. He looked up, meeting her gaze. And you? What about me? Have you forgiven me enough to let me try? Her breath caught. You think it's that easy? No, he said, but I'm hoping it's possible. They walked afterward. No destination, just movement. The city felt lighter, the air less cruel. He told her about the piano, how he started playing again after she left but couldn't finish a song. She told him about the shelter, about the chaos and joy, and small ridiculous creatures that had started healing her. When they reached the corner, she stopped. You don't get to just apologize and disappear again, Cole. I won't, he said. If you'll let me stay. Stay is what she asked softly. He hesitated. As someone learning. From you. She smiled faintly. That's a dangerous proposition. I'm used to risk. Not this kind. He looked at her eyes steady now. Maybe that's why it matters. As the sky shifted toward dusk, Bacon snorted in his sleep. Quinn laughed, and Cole found himself memorizing the sound. For once, he didn't try to categorize it, not as data, not as distraction, just as something alive. When they reached the shelter again, she turned to him. You could volunteer, she said, if you're serious about this whole learning thing. He blinked. Volunteer once a week. No suit, no title, just Cole. He looked horrified. I don't know the first thing about animals. You'll learn, she said, grinning. Everyone starts by cleaning up after pigs. He raised an eyebrow. Symbolic, I assume. Completely, she said. Now go home before you ruin the ending. He hesitated, then said quietly, This doesn't feel like an ending. Maybe it's not, she said. That night, Cole sat at his piano again. The city hummed outside his window, but for the first time, it didn't sound like loneliness. It sounded like possibility. He placed his fingers on the keys. The melody came slowly, hesitant searching. But halfway through, something clicked. The music found its shape. He didn't know if she'd ever hear it. He just knew it was hers. Across town, Quinn wrote in her notebook, Day 6. He found the pig, then maybe found himself. I don't know if I believe in second chances, but I think I just saw one trying to begin. Bacon snorted beside her pillow. She laughed, whispered, Yeah, me too, and turned off the light. Saturday morning arrived, bright and brittle sunlight bouncing off downtown glass. Cole Hartman, the man who once measured life in meetings and minutes, was standing in a barn wearing sneakers, an old t-shirt, and an expression that could only be described as lost. The volunteer coordinator looked him up and down. You must be Quinn's friend, she said with a knowing smile. She said you'd come. I'm not sure friend is the right word, Cole muttered. Then what are you? He hesitated. Trying. The woman grinned. Good answer. The pigs are this way. The shelter buzzed with weekend energy laughter, barking the soft clatter of feeding bowls. It smelled of hay and soap of chaos and care. Cole was out of place, but for once he didn't mind. Then he saw her. Quinn stood by the fence, sleeves rolled, sunlight in her hair, talking softly to a group of kids who were learning to feed the animals. When she turned and saw him, her smile froze halfway between surprise and amusement. Well, she said, wiping her hands. You actually came. I said I would. I thought you might send a donation instead. He shrugged. Money's easy. Mud is harder. Then welcome to the hard part, she said, handing him a small bucket. We're starting with pigs. Seemed fitting. Bacon squealed in recognition and ran straight toward Cole, nearly knocking the bucket from his hands. Cole stumbled. Quinn laughed, the sound warm and unguarded. You're his favorite human, she said. I'm flattered, he replied, regaining his balance. Though I suspect he just smells breakfast. For the next hour, Cole learned humility in its purest form. He shoveled, washed, fed, and listened to Quinn instruct volunteers with gentle authority. Every time their hands brushed, something sparked, not wild, but steady, like a flame that had been waiting for oxygen. At one point, a child tugged Quinn's sleeve. Miss Quinn, are you married? Quinn smiled. No. The girl pointed at Cole. Is that your boyfriend? Cole froze. Quinn laughed. No, sweetie. He's just a friend. The girl looked skeptical. He looks like a boyfriend. Cole cleared his throat. I get that a lot. The children giggled and ran off. Quinn turned to him. "You're good with kids. I'm good with contracts," he said. "Not chaos. Chaos suits you more than you think." He looked at her, half smiling. "You keep saying that. Maybe one day you'll believe it." Later, when the volunteers left and the barn fell quiet, they sat on the wooden fence, watching the sun tilt lower in the sky. The air smelled of hay and soap and something simple, peace maybe. "You're different here," she said softly. He looked at her. "How so?" "Less armored." He glanced down at his mud-streaked sneakers. "Armor doesn't work well in dirt. Maybe you should stay dirty then." He smiled faintly. "Is that an invitation?" "Don't get ahead of yourself, Mr. Hartman." Her teasing faded into quiet. They watched Bacon chase shadows across the grass. After a long pause, Cole said, "My father used to own land like this." She turned to him. "Really outside Boston. Horses, stables, all of it. I used to think it was paradise." "What changed?" "Nothing," he said quietly. "Except the people." He didn't look at her when he added, "He left. My mother turned the house into a museum of discipline. I learned early that love doesn't last, only control does." "Do you still believe that he hesitated?" "I did. Until you." The words came out before he could catch them. They hung there, fragile and terrifying. Quinn looked away, eyes glistening. "Don't say things like that unless you mean them." "I do," he said. She shook her head. "You think you do. But this whatever's between us, it's not simple. I don't want simple." "Then what do you want, Cole?" He exhaled. "You." The honesty in his voice broke something in her. It wasn't grand or poetic. It was raw, human, desperate in the quietest way. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't make me believe again." He stepped closer. "Why not?" "Because believing hurts." He reached out, fingers trembling just slightly, and brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. "So does pretending you don't." For a long time, neither moved. The late sunlight painted everything gold. The fence, the grass, their faces turned toward each other like magnets on the edge of collision. Then, finally, she let go. The kiss wasn't perfect. It wasn't practiced or planned. It was hesitant at first, two people learning a language they'd both forgotten. But when she leaned into him, something inside both of them unlocked. It wasn't about forgiveness. It was about recognition, the quiet knowing that they'd both been walking toward this moment long before they admitted it. When they finally broke apart, the world felt different, smaller, closer, alive. "Now what?" Quinn whispered, eyes still closed. Now he said softly, "I keep proving I mean it." She opened her eyes. "And if you fail, then I'll start over." She smiled faintly. "You're not very good at giving up, are you? I had a good teacher." Her laugh was soft, shaky, beautiful. "Don't make me regret this." "I won't," he said. "Not again." They spent the next few hours cleaning up the barn, shoulders brushing laughter, spilling in the spaces where words used to hurt. When it was finally dark, Cole walked her home. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. At her doorstep, Quinn hesitated. "You sure you're ready for this? Real things are messy. People break. And you like control." He smiled faintly. "Maybe I like you more." She studied him, trying to find the old walls, but they weren't there anymore. Only the man beneath. "Then come in," she said. Her apartment was small, filled with soft light and the faint smell of lavender. Books stacked unevenly, a plant dying nobly on the windowsill. Bacon snorted from his bed by the heater. Cole looked around, smiling. "It's you. That's either the sweetest or most judgmental thing you've ever said." Sweetest, he said, stepping closer. Quinn tilted her head. You're still in your work mode, aren't you? Observing, analyzing. I'm adapting, he murmured. To what? You. The space between them vanished again, slower this time. Deeper. This kiss wasn't hesitant. It was a promise. A surrender. A quiet rewriting of everything they thought they knew about control. When they broke apart, her forehead rested against his. This doesn't mean I've forgiven you completely. I don't want forgiveness, he whispered. Just a chance to deserve it. She smiled. You're getting better at saying the right things. Maybe I finally found the right person to say them to. Later, as she made tea, Cole wandered to her bookshelf. His hand brushed against a worn notebook, familiar, intimate. He opened it and read the first line. Day 1. Learn the language of ice, and don't let my heart freeze trying. He froze. Quinn looked up from the kitchen. You shouldn't read that. He closed the book gently. I already have. She sighed. It was supposed to be private. I know, he said. But thank you. For what? For trying to understand me when I didn't understand myself. She walked over, took the notebook from his hands and said softly, Then don't make me start a new one about heartbreak. I won't, he said. But if you ever do, I hope I'm still in it, even as a lesson. Careful, she said, smiling. You're starting to sound like someone who feels. Maybe I finally do. They sat together on the couch, tea steaming between them. Bacon snored softly. The city murmured outside. For the first time in months, silence wasn't a weapon between them. It was home. Cole glanced at her voice, barely above a whisper. Do you still write every day? Most days, she said, when I need to make sense of things. What did you write today? She thought for a moment, then said, Day 7. He came back, not to fix what broke, but to build what never was. He nodded, eyes glinting. Then I'll keep showing up, every day, until when she asked. Until you stop writing, he said. And even then I'll still read between the lines. That night after he left, Quinn stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker like quiet stars. Her heart was still afraid, but it was beating for something again. And somewhere across town, Cole sat at his piano playing the melody he'd started months ago. This time it had an ending, soft, hopeful, true. The first morning they woke up together, sunlight spilled across the sheets like mercy. Quinn stirred, first half dreaming, half afraid to open her eyes, in case the night had been a fragile illusion. But when she felt his hand still resting on hers, warm and steady, she knew it wasn't a dream. Cole Hartman, the man who once measured love in risk and distance, was lying beside her, a sleep, peaceful human. She studied his face. Without the sharpness of command, he looked younger, softer, as if he had finally laid down a burden no one else had ever seen. She smiled. Maybe healing doesn't come with fireworks, she thought. Maybe it just comes quietly like this. By the time she brewed coffee, he was standing by the window, barefoot, watching the city wake. Still trying to control the skyline, she teased. He turned, smiling faintly. Just making sure it doesn't collapse without me. Newsflash, it won't. He walked over, took the mug from her hand, and said softly, You made coffee. Old habits, she said. He sipped. 2 sugars. She blinked. You remember. I remember everything he said simply. Something inside her melted, slow and irrevocable. They spent the morning in quiet rhythm, her feeding bacon, him helping badly. When she laughed at his clumsy attempt to open a can, he said, I built a billion-dollar empire. Surely I can manage a tin lid. You can't, she said, rescuing it. But at least you look determined. He leaned against the counter. You like me better when I fail, don't you? I like you better when you're real. He paused. Then I'll keep trying to be. But reality, as always, had its own timing. That afternoon, Cole's phone buzzed relentlessly. He ignored it twice. On the third time, Quinn gave him the look. You should answer. It's work. It always is. He sighed and took the call. Within minutes, the warmth of the morning evaporated. When he hung up, his jaw was tight again, the armor creeping back. What happened? She asked. The board scheduled an emergency vote. They're planning to restructure merge with a tech conglomerate. It's not just numbers, Quinn. It's everything I built. Then go, she said quietly. He looked at her. What if I lose it? Then you'll still have something you didn't before. He hesitated. You. She smiled faintly. Then, don't make me regret being the thing you fight for. He left for the office suite and all. She stayed behind feeding bacon and pretending she wasn't terrified that the old Cole, the CEO, the perfectionist, the man made of ice and logic, might return. By evening, she couldn't stand it anymore. She went to the shelter, cleaned stalls, talked to volunteers, anything to quiet the voice, whispering that some people never really change. But when she checked her phone around 8 p.m., there was still nothing. No call. No message. She exhaled sharply. Fine, she muttered. Go save your empire. Bacon oinked as if agreeing. At that same hour, Cole stood before the board, a dozen suits polished and impatient. Mr. Hartman, the chairman, said, We've reviewed your objections, but the merger proposal ensures profit stability. Emotion has no place here. Cole looked at the chart glowing on the wall, projections, percentages, a neat mathematical future. For years, this room had been his kingdom. Numbers obeyed him. People followed him. But Quinn's voice echoed in his mind. You like control more than truth. He cleared his throat. You're right. Emotion doesn't belong here. But integrity does. The room shifted. A murmur. He continued. We built this company on human connection. Every campaign that worked, every contract we saved, came from people who cared, not just calculated. If we sell to those who see numbers and not names, we lose what made us worth buying. Someone scoffed. That's sentiment, not strategy. Cole smiled slightly. Maybe they're the same thing. Silence. Then the chairman said, And if we reject the merger, then we rebuild, Cole said simply. From the ground up, if we must. A long pause. Then a slow, reluctant nod. Motion denied, the chairman said. The company stays independent. Cole didn't exhale until he was back in the hallway. He leaned against the wall, the tension draining from his body, replaced by something else, relief. Not victory, peace. He arrived at Quinn's apartment past midnight. She was curled on the couch, half asleep. Bacon snoring at her feet. When the door clicked open, she stirred. Hey, she whispered. How bad? He smiled, tired but alive. Bad enough to matter. Good enough to win. She stood, walked over, and wrapped her arms around him. You did it. We did, he corrected softly. When she looked up, his eyes were different, unguarded, raw, full. He kissed her forehead, her cheek, and finally her mouth, slow, deliberate, certain. The kind of kiss that doesn't promise perfection, only presence. Days turned into weeks and weeks into a rhythm neither dared name, but both already lived inside. Cole started spending weekends at the shelter, learning to be still. He was terrible at it. He overfed the rabbits, got chased by a goose, and once tried to negotiate with a cat. But every failure made Quinn laugh, and every laugh drew him closer to something he hadn't known he was missing: belonging. He didn't talk about the past much, But sometimes when she caught him looking at her with that faraway expression, she knew he was measuring the distance between the man he'd been and the one he was becoming. And maybe for the first time, he wasn't afraid of the distance. He was proud of it. One evening after closing time, they sat on the shelter's porch. The air was heavy with summer, and the sound of the city felt distant, like another life. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "The noise," he said. "The chaos. The control." He smiled faintly. "Sometimes. Then I remember what it cost. And what was that? Everything that mattered." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "You're getting poetic." He chuckled. "Don't tell anyone. It'll ruin my reputation." "Too late," she said, smiling. "You're already a volunteer with a pig." Bacon snorted, as if on cue. They laughed quietly. The moment stretched easy, full. Then Quinn's voice softened. "Cole. Yeah, do you ever think about what comes next?" He looked at her. "Every day. And I want to build something that doesn't require walls." She smiled. "That sounds a lot like love." He turned to her. "Maybe it is." Weeks later, Hartman and Vale announced its first philanthropic branch, a creative partnership with the Bridge Home Foundation to fund shelters and community programs. The press called it a surprising pivot from profit to purpose. Cole called it the best decision of his life. When reporters asked what inspired the change, he simply said, "Someone taught me that compassion scales better than ambition." Quinn watched the interview on her laptop, smiling. "He's learning," she told Bacon, who grunted approvingly. On the day of the foundation's official opening, the entire shelter buzzed. Cameras, donors, laughter, sunlight everywhere. Quinn stood on stage speaking about second chances, not just for animals, but for people too. "Love," she said, "isn't about erasing what's broken. It's about choosing to stay, even when it hurts, to build again." The applause was gentle, heartfelt. When she stepped down, Cole was waiting by the edge of the crowd, holding a single white rose. "For you," he said. She smiled. "You always did prefer symbolism, and you always preferred honesty," he said, taking her hand. "So here's mine. I want a life with you, Quinn. Not as an idea, not as redemption. Just life." She looked at him, eyes shining. "And what happens when it gets hard again?" He squeezed her hand. "Then we stay. We rebuild. Like you said." She exhaled, laughing softly. "You just quoted me. Get used to it," he said. "I plan to do it for a long time." That night, after everyone left, they stayed behind to clean up the stage. Empty, the lights dimmed, the city breathing outside. Cole wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "You know," he whispered, "for years, I thought happiness was a reward for success. Turns out it's just someone to come home to." Quinn turned in his arms, her eyes soft. "And you found that?" He smiled. "I did." She kissed him then, a quiet, certain kiss that didn't feel like an ending at all. More like a beginning written in the language they'd finally learned together. Later, when the lights were out and the shelter was silent, Quinn opened her notebook one last time. Day 365. The ice melted. The empire softened. And the man who feared love learned. It wasn't a weakness, but a way home. She closed the notebook, slid it onto the shelf, and turned to him, already asleep, beside her hand, resting over hers, as if to remind her that even miracles need something solid to hold. Outside, the city lights shimmered like quiet stars. Not promises, but proof. Proof that even after all the cold years, warmth can return. That even the hardest hearts can learn to stay. And that sometimes love doesn't save you from yourself. It teaches you how to begin again. If this story made you believe that people can change that love, when honest, can rebuild what fear once destroyed, share it. Because somewhere, someone is still waiting for their morning after forever.